How's everybody feeling? Come on now, give it up for Baldor, y'all. I've never seen anything like this before, and to get us all out of the kitchen. My name is Chef JJ. I'm your moderator. This is gonna be what I consider a very passionate conversation around culture. We have some of the best chefs in the world that have been pushing the envelope on how we've been dining in New York City, but also the reflection of how chefs are coming up and envisioning what food looks like. I'm gonna pass the mic to them to introduce themselves, and we can start at the end.
Hello, my name is Ayo, and I cook at Department of Culture.
Hey everyone, I'm Fariyal Abdullahi. I'm the executive chef at Hav and Mar.
Who was hooting right now? Okay. So, guys, my name is Chintan Pandya. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming for this amazing session. Super excited for it. And I'm the chef partner at Unapologetic Foods.
Hi, everybody. My name is David Shim, executive chef at COTE Korean Steakhouse and partner at GHM. Thank you.
I'm gonna jump right into it. So, for me, if you know me, I'm a lover of rice. And cultural food, for me, starts with rice at the table. I'm gonna go to Aisle first. When I believe that jollof rice is the entry point of West African food. For many people out there, if you don't know jollof rice, shame on you. And why is jollof a topic of conversation right now with the American palate?
Well, I think if you go to most parts of West Africa, or even Africa, we all eat jollof rice. And I think it's actually a little too late that we are beginning to know that now. And every country in Africa has their own little version of jollof rice. And it's something we all fight over. Just to make a quick disclaimer, Nigeria makes the best jollof rice.
I knew it was gonna happen. I
think we should just say that right now. And it's just every country in Africa has a version, especially in West Africa. And it's something everybody's mom makes a different way. And it's an expression of every country's herbs and spices, basically.
And the reason why I started with that, I'm gonna go to Chintan next, is that biryani is the other point of entry, right?
Yeah.
And in your country, you can make it how many different ways?
Biryani actually is made in different ways in different part of Asia. And it came to India through the Middle East. So there's a different version of it. Within India, you have different versions of biryani. And again, you know, as Chef said, that Nigeria makes the best, India will claim it makes the best. And then in India, you have sub-regions which will keep on claiming that they make it best and everything. But I think if you look at these dishes, the jollof rice, the biryani, it has the same potential as to how a ramen shop is. But I think what has happened is culturally, we have not been able to market it that way. You know, every culture has this rice dish which is meant for communal eating. And it's that comfort food when you go back home, you know, you crave it. There are days when you're not feeling well and you just want to eat that dish which has got rice, protein, some flavor into it. And I think all the cultures has it, and just that we have not been able to market it right till now.
I actually have a very, I have a huge connection with biryani rice. So I'm Ethiopian, and people don't necessarily equate Ethiopian food to rice. But the tribe that I'm from, so out of a population of 120 million, my tribe, there's only 250,000 of us. So it's a very, very tiny population. So growing up, for me, there's a huge influence because of the spice trade and my tribe from India. So for me, growing up, biryani was Ethiopian food. Oh, wow. Yeah, so that's that. I grew up eating biryani, and I didn't realize, you know, that's not necessarily what a lot of people consider Ethiopian food until I was like...
Do you remember the style of biryani you grew up eating?
Yeah, I mean, my mom used to do lamb or chicken. But I didn't understand that wasn't necessarily what the majority of the population understood to be Ethiopian food. But for me, even now, when I go home to visit my mom, unequivocally, the dish she makes me is biryani.
Yeah.
So
That's amazing.
Such a huge, it made it all the way to Ethiopia.
Well, the spice trade is really important in cultural dining. If you follow the spices or if you follow the rice, it can take you on a journey through West Africa, now East or West, from India to the Caribbean. But you said something really important. You talked about marketing, and I want to throw this to David. You guys have done an amazing job at COTE, right? Being able to give people something that's part of your culture that the American palate views as very low brow, that you're getting a lot of money out of everybody. A lot, right? And there's perception there. Yeah. Rice does hit the table, but there's perception. Can you talk about how you guys develop perception to take finance bros to spend money like they're going to Peter Luger?
Okay. To start, I think internally, what we preach a lot to our team is lowbrow and highbrow, just as you mentioned. And what's lowbrow? You can come into the restaurant, spend the minimum that you want to, but if you want to go to the highbrow, we have caviar to truffles, A5, you name it. We can go as high as you want. But at the same time, the perception of value is very important. And I think we try to call ourselves a people's champion that, in Korean culture, there's this term called jung, which is a sentiment that you get, not just because you want to do nice things to them, it's just to take care of one another. And I think as we continue to venture, just with Gokodak and COTE as well, it's how do I put that not as just a financial gain for the restaurant, but as a financial gain for the rest of the community. As we give back, I think we get back as well.
No, I mean, that's a great way to put it. The financial gain for the community, I think all of you do something very amazing for your community staying true and delivering at this really high area. Fariyal, talk about, you're in Chelsea, right? In partnership with Marcus Samuelson, cooking food on a palate that many Americans are not used to, Ethiopian food. The first time I dined there, I got umami, I got sour, I got things that I never experienced. You guys are full every night. How's that approach? What are you doing right?
So obviously it's been a huge topic of conversation since the day we opened, or even before we opened, right? Conceptualizing the menu. There's a lot of conversations about approachability. And that word has since become my least favorite word in the English vocabulary because I'm tired of talking about making my food more approachable. So when we did the very first menu to open Havamar, you guys know how it goes. You make the menu, and then there's a series of tasting that you do for everybody involved in running the business, obviously. And the question for us was always, is this approachable enough? And for me, the most important thing was, when you come to Hav, you don't necessarily think this is Ethiopian food. It's essentially seafood, like the thing that ties us, the whole menu together, it's seafood, but told through the lens of the African diaspora. So not just Ethiopia, but the entire continent. And while I understand opening a restaurant in Chelsea, that's not necessarily accessible because it's like so far away from the trains. I'm willing to have conversations about, okay, let's make it approachable. But what I'm not willing to have a conversation about is dialing down the flavors. So if I have to water down my berbere, for example, I would honestly rather have a slow restaurant than selling food that I don't believe in. And I never back down on that. So you don't necessarily see African cuisine when you come to Hav, but the flavors are certainly there. And that's my non-negotiable. And I think we've succeeded pretty well. We're in the James Beard finals this year.
Big up for you. Big up.
New York Times is top 12 restaurants. So I think if you stick to your guns about not dialing back your true flavors, there's other approachable ways of bringing your food into the community in a comfortable way for people, I guess.
Are you seeing the same thing in Brooklyn?
Well, yeah. I think for me, trying to do a restaurant like the Pamela culture was, imagine you're trying to build a Nigerian restaurant. Nobody will ever give you money to do that, period. It sounds like a very bad idea. Try doing it during COVID. It's even a worse idea. And but there was something I just stood. I thought I wanted to serve the food I grew up eating with absolute dignity. I think in my country alone, in Nigeria, we have about 220-something million people. We have more people in Nigeria with Nigerian flavors and sensibilities than most other countries we know the kind of food they eat. And this is supposed to be an international spot, like New York State. So I think it's very important that, what most of us are doing here, I think it's quite important. Serving the food with absolute dignity and that's one of the things, we get one of those things where people come into the space and if you can put just a little bit oysters in the in the pepper soup, and I'm like, then it won't be pepper soup anymore.
Right.
Or I think the most important thing is just to do these things we do with absolute dignity, and I think we're all showing that there's room for that. It's important, or else we'll be eating the same thing for the next 100 years.
Yeah, nobody wants to eat the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, Chintan, when I talk to people that eat at your restaurant, they go, hey, yo, it's spicy. I don't know. It's so good, but it's so spicy. For me, that's part of the culture, of your culture, of what you're cooking. When you design your menus, are you thinking about that on the American palate? I shouldn't make the food spicy, or this shouldn't be spicy, or I shouldn't cook lamb neck or goat neck or these things?
No, I think that's a very wrong statement. It's actually not spicy, it's actually very spicy. So let me put it that way first. And, it's been so long, the way they said approachable and everything. And I'm not saying that everybody makes the food in a similar way in India. You go different houses, you go this house, this house, this house, same dish made in a different way. What we believe in is to give you that best version of that dish. And for that, if it's spicy, it needs to be spicy. You understand? So something that I think culturally that we have always believed in is that, we always thought that let's be good to people. But in that, we compromised our own culture, our own cuisine. And the entire food was lost in translation. And I think what we decided was that, we want to serve food to people that we personally would love to eat. And that was the entire theory. So if there's a dish which doesn't need something, it shouldn't be there. But if it needs it, we'll put it. So it's as simple as that. I'm seeing you do that right now again with fried chicken. I'm going to come back to you on this one. You're doing the same thing with fried chicken. You're expanding that brand. Can you talk a little bit about that? You're disrupting the market there. You're putting it in places like 34th Street, right? Where you don't see that style of food. If you look around, it's salad places, it's wraps, right? It's Tex-Mex. How do you convince a developer or a landlord it is okay to have this food here and they still think that you're going to pay rent? So we obviously say to him that if Chef JJ can do it, we can also do it. He actually is doing a phenomenal job. And honestly, the first time you don't even know that. The first time, I didn't even know who he was. He didn't know my relevance at all. So it was 2019 in Aspen, and you gave a talk on rice. And I didn't know where you were from, and then I Googled you, and then I realized you are in New York City doing it, and that's how I became a big fan of yours.
Thank you.
And I think what has happened is that as Indians, if you look at our size, all of us are very fat because we eat a lot of fried food. We eat insane amount of fried food, but we had never standardized the concept of anything. And I think that's where we said, we love eating fried food. Me and Ronnie, my business partner, we travel different cities just to eat fried food. Wow. And we love it. Like the first thing we do is as soon as we land, we pick up 3-4 fried food spots, like fried chicken spots or fried, whatever it is. And we love it. So that entire concept is built around it. And it's to do justice to the kind of chilies that we use in India. Because every region uses a different kind of chili with a different spice level, with a different, property to it. So some will give impact a lot on the color, some will impact on the spice. And I think that's where the entire concept of this came about.
That's great. David, are you sourcing? Like you go and source ingredients and you tell folks, this is what we're going to do. Do they believe in you when you're sourcing, or they just say, hey, you're just going to be another Korean spot?
I think when it comes to sourcing, definitely in the beginning, it was hard to, educate the customers because call it, Korean food back in the day, when we were in the culinary scene 10, 15 years ago, everything was concentrated in K-Town. Now, K-Town, as much as I still love it, drink soju and whatever the late nights that we have, it didn't have the best reputations. And I think for us to do this higher quality, call it steakhouse, which is a genre that didn't exist 10, 15 years ago, people are like, why are you different from the K-Town spots? What are you sourcing? And in the beginning, it was like, hey, yeah, we're actually sourcing, going to local farms, trying to source better co-ops and different markets to give everybody a better quality of product. And how do we get there? I think it's just by trial and error, and it's more about investing in your team, right? Like I think, how do you get your cooks, your chefs to believe in what you do? How do you get your managers, the SOMs, to the bartenders to believe the things that they do? Because technically, different departments don't really have to care about what others are doing as they're succeeding. But I think at COTE, and I'm sure with the rest of you guys, I hated working for some restaurants in the past where the back and the front was completely divided. I think that was at growing up in the culinary scene, it was fun to watch chefs go at the managers back and forth. But once you run your business, that's like the worst division you can have. And how do we cultivate that? I think it's us lowering ourselves a little bit, embracing the differences one another to support. And once you have that team, then you're kind of undefeatable. And I think we all survived COVID. I can't do it by myself. Correct. We did it as a team. And I think that shows how we can get further into educating our customers and even building our businesses.
That's a great point. Ayo, you have basically what I consider 3 outlets under a roof, right?
Yeah.
Can you walk us through, and all of them are very true to you. Right. How did you build all 3 of them to exist? Similar to what David's saying here, how did you get them to exist in this ecosystem to stay true to what you want to do, part of your culture?
Well, it's a bit of a journey, but we were talking about, you mentioned something earlier, like how do you convince landlords to rent to restaurants? Can you imagine convincing landlords to rent to just you? It's a completely different business when you have support. You are the only support. It's a different business. It's you're the PR, you're the janitor, you're the forget the people cooking. You're everything. It's almost magical to actually be able to achieve that. You have to be able to pivot. It's important. I'm not suggesting that you have to do something desperately radical, but you have to be ready to actually pivot. It's important. Like during COVID, it was insane. At some point, I didn't even know what the business was. We knew we worked in that space, but we were gonna serve something out of that space. And we did that every day. And yeah, we made it out of COVID because I think we opened a place and a week later there was a shutdown. And I'm like, oh no. Yeah. And I actually said we were essential before they said everybody was essential. I'm like, I think we're essential. We need to feed people. So you have to be ready for stuff like that. Then you take the journey through like Department of Culture. Sometimes you just have to do something that's just truly yours. It's important. The way we've done restaurants for such a long time is the same way. Restaurants are not boring, they are very interesting. I've worked in a lot of them and I love the restaurant culture. But we're gonna be eating the same thing that we've been eating for the past 20 years forever. There are hundreds of flavors all over the world that we don't know. Like, think about that. You know, you like some little tart stuff and something slightly sour. Hundreds of flavors you don't know. It's very important that sorry.
No, I want you to stay there. It's like, there are 100 of flavors that people don't know. And the people that write about food don't know, they only know about 15 flavors, I call it, right? So they come into our restaurants and they critique us, but they've never been to Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, right? What's their reference point? And I want you to stay on that 100 flavor point, right? Because that's a big risk you're taking, right? You're introducing some new flavor to a palate that doesn't understand it at all.
It's basically you're showing people color for the first time. That's what flavor is like. You're showing color for the first time when people are saying maybe even black and white and slow motion, and you're showing color for the first time. So that's the kind of stuff you're trying to do. Sometimes you have to do it yourself. Like, I just did Department of Culture by myself because nobody, I'm not going to name names, but I'm definitely doing that. We're quite fortunate. But there were businesses that actually rejected our account that we're supposed to pay for. And I'm like, oh, I think it's a bad idea. Like a week before you open, like, you know, and they came back to us. We're like, don't worry, we're fine now. But I'm talking about services that we all use in restaurants. You have to believe in yourself. The same way we've done restaurants is just the way we've done it forever. It's not going to change if you don't go do that weird thing. You know that little odd thing? It's a good idea. You just have to do it. You have to do it on a scale that's manageable to you, that you can be sustainable doing it, but do it. It's important, really. We're going to have another, again, I'm not knocking pizza, by the way. This is pizza walk, right away. So, like, yeah. I used to be very slender, then I ate pizza. But we're going to have a new pizza place somewhere on this island, probably in the next 24 hours. Think about it. There's so many other flavors all over the world that we haven't even tried, that we don't know. When we approach these things, it's important that we approach it from a neutral sensibility. Because, and I do understand that, you know, some of the writers come and they don't know what this food is. That's what our job is now. We have to make it accessible. You have to hold the fort and deal with it with absolute dignity. I'm letting you guys know, if I can do what I was able to do at the Department of Culture, everybody here can do all the Michelin-star restaurants, really. Seriously, you can all do it. Everyone can do it. Like, we did it, I did it by myself, period.
Yeah,
So-
you don't have, yes, people don't know that. When they see you get nominated for a James Beard Award, you're getting a write-up, they haven't done the time to look back.
No.
Like, you really bet on yourself, and then you convince somebody to give you a location, and then to cook the food. Because, and the reason why I say this, and I want to put this in retrospect, why I'm bringing up like this economic way around food, is that, and I'm not like, Jean, George, and Danielle work very hard, right, to where they are.
Absolutely.
But developers are knocking on their doors on a consistent rate, right? To put their food in places where they're not stroking a check, okay? Some of us are going into places that we were fighting an individual landlord to tell them that this global flavor approach is the next wave, and it's going to work out, and we're going to pay you the rent or the taxes, right? Or don't worry, it's not going to be ruckus. And it's really hard when you start to get into those arenas around not independent-owned buildings. So, and that's why, like, what Fariyal's doing in Chelsea, right, or 34th Street, or you guys are expanding. These are bigger conversations that we need to have around global food, or just our food. So I just wanted to jump in there and say that.
I think it's just important that I'll give you guys a little story. So the first day I was ever in the New York Times, like we were like I had a giant picture of myself. I think I had a little skip in my step that day because also I couldn't find the New York Times because I was looking for one, but everybody was sending pictures of it. And we were supposed to like get we're trying to sign a new list. And the lady just looked at me and was like, yeah, you African, no, I'm not doing that. And I'm like, it's like, we have to do like a criminal background check. And I'm like, wait, you mean like just a regular, no, she's like, no, a criminal. I'm like, and I think the New York Times does their background check. I don't think you have the resources to do a better one that they will do. But yeah, we're lucky now that everybody wants us to come and want to invest in the things we do. But in a way, it's almost even lucky now if you're by yourself. It sounds insane, but you're almost lucky because you get to do exactly what you want to do. The passion you have to do your own work, nobody can pay for it. No investor can actually invest in that.
So Fariyal, how was that when Marcus gave you a call, right? I know you guys have been working together for a while, and then what I've seen from the outside looking in, you're running the show there. It's all you. And I'm sure that building's a big landlord, right? You guys are doing a lot of different meal points. How was that process to get to where you guys got in that space? With the flavors, going back to my original question, like that scallop dish is phenomenal, right? How did you deal with that on the initial level before consumers started to eat that food?
I mean, we had the benefit of Marcus being a huge brand, obviously. So I think it was a lot easier for us in that aspect where Marcus is already a brand versus Ayo trying to get a deal, when no one knows him yet. So we really use that as our biggest tool. And going back to, kind of what you were saying about how, a lot of the writers that come and critique our food know nothing about our food, right? So from the very beginning, we knew what kind of food that we wanted to do. And it always centered around, all right, is this approachable enough? Is this approachable enough? And like I said before, the thing that I was never willing to negotiate on is the flavors. We can make the food appear a certain way, but the flavors needed to be, if my grandmother came to the restaurant, she would know exactly, like, this is dorowet. Doesn't look like it, but that's dorowet. That's the only thing I was not willing to negotiate on. So piggybacking off of Marcus being a brand already and me being extremely stubborn about not dialing back on the food that I want guests to experience, has been pretty successful. When you're asking about the how are people receiving your food? I remember when I first got reviewed by the New York Times, that was my first time as an executive chef being reviewed, and we knew it was happening. And I almost had a breakdown, and I said the exact same things you said because I'm like, what does this person know about food from the African diaspora? And obviously everybody was telling me, your first review is really important. It's either going to make or break your career. And for me, it was so frustrating because I'm like, well, is it somebody that knows African food?
Not even African food, right? Just like you guys are honing in on a specific place in Africa with specific flavors.
Right.
Right?
So you really, and I think that's the common thread between all of us. It sounds like each one of us has been very stubborn about not necessarily making our food approachable. And I was just like, even if it's a bad review, it wasn't. We got a really great review. Even if it was, then that's just not my audience. People, something that you don't see on a restaurant level. You get all these accolades that is visible to the public, but as true restaurant operators, the true success for us is making sure we have butts and seats. Butts and seats. That's the true success.
That's 100% the success is. I've changed, and I know all of us, you talked about that. We've all have changed and looked at that. Yes, for pride, we would love the great reviews.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's like, how many people did we serve tonight? Were they happy? Did they actually write really great reviews?
Exactly.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean,
And if I may, I think
Go ahead.
all of us during our careers have worked for some powerhouses, whether it be in New York, throughout the world. You know, everybody held their own to a certain degree, high caliber, but I think myself included, we come to a point, it's like, where do I go from here? You know, do I still go that French route, American, or do I seek my own roots? And I think finding yourself in the culinary journey for me was the hardest, but also the most grateful experience that I've had. And being here with the rest of you guys, where you guys are passionate about all the things that you guys are doing, makes me also believe that the decision that I've made, that we've made, is the correct one. And we just want to continue to pursue this.
JJ, I also want to say, it's kind of like the thing about social media, right? We only show our best. No one really shows the ugly side of things. And I think on stage you have very successful chefs who have managed to break through a lot
very
of
successful
barriers.
chefs.
Right. I do want to also point out that it's not always easy. And for myself personally, you know, obviously I'm the executive chef at Have Amar, but I do a lot of things outside of Hav as well. And I'll give you an example. Recently I did we do a lot of private events for myself. And, you know, they pay a lot of good money. So it's a good gig to have. But the optics of me being the EC at Hav and that coming with so many accolades, people want to hire me to do these private events, but I get asked so often to do food that's not mine.
I stopped doing those.
I'm
sure we all have.
Listen, I was supposed to do one this coming Monday, and at the very minute, I said no because they asked me to do Italian food. I said, respectfully, you probably want an Italian chef.
Correct.
Because everything they listed that they did not want was my food.
I want to, you made my brain go to a place. Chintan, I'm going to go to you on this one. Floyd Cardoza, right? For me, when I think about Indian food, because you just made me think about this. When I think about Indian food, he opened up the doors for the future and he educated the palate, right? I go back to the first restaurant with him and Danny Meyer, right? Talking about getting reviewed. He got beat up. You can open that restaurant right now and everybody would go crazy for it. And we were all young kids at that time. Do you ever go back and look at what Floyd has done? And do you go and, because I mean, I look at you as like a product of Floyd. Like, you guys have what, 10 restaurants now? 15?
No, 7.
7. Sorry, 7.
20.
But you're paving a way for the next, or people right now. How does that make you feel?
So I think what happened is that Chef Floyd created a legacy. He created a phenomenal legacy, and you know, like it was a restaurant which was ahead of its time and everything. But you know what has happened is that we have not been able to build on it. Like I'm talking about 2 years back that we saw space, we loved it. And they quoted us a price and we says, okay, we are okay with everything. Like everything was agreed on. And they came back to us saying that the landlord feels that it's not cool enough to do an Indian restaurant over here. So, you know, like even after this legacy is there, even after being proven time and time, like all of us have proven it, we still fall in that category where we are still questioned. We are still asked that, are you worthy enough to be there? You know, and I think it's for all the ethnic food. I'm not talking about Indian food. Like, I don't know if many people know or not, but we have a Filipino restaurant in our company now. And it's the funniest thing, like how systematically a dish can be destroyed. So if you go to any Filipino restaurant in America, anywhere you travel, like you'll eat this dish called sisig. And it's basically a pork dish in a sizzler plate, very creamy, very creamy. And the way they make it creamy is with a mayonnaise. And our chef partner is Chef Eric. We traveled back to Philippines with him to understand. And we would eat this dish in Manila and it was still the similar way. But when we actually went to the interior of Philippines, the way this dish is actually made creamy is with the pork brain. They never used mayonnaise. But because this dish was imported somewhere and it was not accepted, to make it acceptable, they started adding mayonnaise. So, it's a very big fight that all of us are fighting for. It's not a very simple battle, and it will still take a lot of time. It will still take a lot of conviction. Like they said that, they believed in it. They had to do it this way. Because if they don't, in next 10 years, the entire food would, whatever region the food comes from, will be very diluted. And it will become very Americanized and Western. And I think that's the fight.
No, and it is a fight. I once had a conversation with a chef before that said, Gwyneth Paltrow could go around and just call stuff goop. I can't go around and I can't make jollof potato chips because I have to represent my culture, right? And representing your culture is more sometimes than maybe getting a check, because there's only but so much of us out there fighting the fight. So before we get into questions from the audience, because there's a lot of people here, I'm going to go down. Dave, I'll start with you first. What's your favorite Baldor ingredient?
I had to think about this a lot, but my pick would be chayote, which is a fruit that we use to pickle, only because that was the first pickle that we made at the restaurant before we opened, and we still have it, and we're 7 years in. So every time I see it, I hate peeling it because it gets all over your hand. You can't wash it off. But I still enjoy making it. I still enjoy eating it. So chayote is my pick.
What's up?
Rabbit.
Rabbit?
Yeah. So we get the specific rabbit for one of the restaurant, and it comes from upstate New York. It's a phenomenal product, actually.
It's great.
The classic chef story of being in the weeds and trying to place your orders at the same time. One day, this was like right around the time we opened, I was trying to place an order for cherry bomb peppers. And I ordered something that I'd never seen before, Peruvian peppers. They also call it sweetie drops. And I'd never seen it before. It came by accident. And I thought they were so cute because they're so tiny and bright red. So I just blistered them and started using it as a garnish. And that's the one thing everybody asks us about now. And I refuse to stop using it. They're so cute.
Well, mine will be guinea fowl. It's one of those things where in Nigeria we consume a lot of guinea fowl. We don't use it that much here, but to find something so conveniently at Baldor is actually quite brilliant. Like, I was looking for guinea fowl everywhere, and I was able to actually. Also, if anybody's familiar with Baldor, I think you can place an order today and get it tomorrow. That's good. And also for people who are not like super organized like me, to have that app, I'm like, 3 minutes, I can do this. I'm like, I feel like I'm doing a Baldor commercial, but like, believe me, it helps.
So your favorite ingredients is the app?
Is the app. Basically, the app to get the guinea fowl.
Got you. Questions. Woo! I see a lot of hands. How's this work? Is the microphone going to come around? Should I pick somebody? Come on, she coming. We'll go right here. There's a mic there. Go ahead. Go first, and then we'll go here. Or we'll go here.
Good afternoon, chefs. We're talking about teaching the people, teaching the client, teaching the developers. How would you approach talking with culinary schools, culinary job centers, and teaching our local community workforce about these international flavors, so it's not just pegged into them codified French words, French cooking techniques? How do we get our workforce in this knowledge of global?
I'm gonna throw that question to David.
Culinary Institute of America is where I went to school with JJ. We go way back. I see him playing basketball on the courts, playing soccer out in the fields. We just spoke about this. The curriculum of culinary schools have changed dramatically in the last 4 or 5 years. And I recently visited CIA maybe 2-3 years back. Everything that I learned has completely changed. The depth of knowledge, depth of cuisine, they're technically scratching the tip of the iceberg, has definitely grown so far to what we've have. And I think if we continue this path in the next couple of years, I think we can really deep dive into every culture and try to really get down into the flavors that we've all been missing out on. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually a CIA alum too. And one of my chef instructors reached out because they want to put injera as part of their baking and pastry program. So they reached out to me.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop. That's
In
impressive.
general.
That's
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, they want to put it on the curriculum, so we're making
So you
small
gave them the
changes.
recipe?
What? I'm
Did-
not.
You give them the recipe. Make sure they write you a check or pay for your student loan.
Always write a check.
Who else? I'm gonna come right here. Oh, go ahead. Go right here.
So my question is, when it comes to introducing new ingredients, how would you tell the story of the new ingredient? I know like you don't want to compromise flavor or compromise integrity or your culture. So what are some ways that you tell, I guess, the story with your menu or the new ingredient to kind of introduce it to people in a different way?
For me at Hav, it's been about managing expectations. I think Western world loves the story. So if you're introducing something that might be very nuanced or something that's very new to somebody's palate, all of our servers know if you tell the story behind it, people are more likely to enjoy it versus here's a really spicy dish that you may not enjoy if you didn't know the story behind it. So, bridging the gap between front of house and back of house. My servers know a lot of the stories behind the dishes just as much as we do. So that has really helped us introduce new flavors at my restaurant.
And I would just say, stay
I'll
true
just
to
add
yourself.
on,
Go
I'll
ahead.
just
Yeah,
add
go.
on one thing. It needs to be very honest. So whatever you do, it doesn't matter if the ingredient is expensive, mid-range, or not expensive. It needs to be very honest. It needs to be coming from a space where you believe in it. If you believe in it, it will work, trust me. If you try to do something that is like you trying to show it off to people that what you are capable of, it might not work. It needs to come from a very honest space.
Let me see hands. We'll go here. Then we'll go yellow bandana. Then we'll go green hat. And then we'll go suit.
Hi, thank you, Chef, so much for your talk. One of the questions I had is specifically around accessibility, but particularly accessibility in the dining room, because it does feel like sometimes when cultural foods get elevated, the demographics of the dining room start to change in terms of the consumer themselves. So really, I guess my question is, as you guys are working on your craft, what strategies do you keep in mind so that not only does the New York Times feel interested, but also the aunties who are, true to it are really engaged and also returning?
Well, the joke in the back of house at Department of Culture is like, it's the aunties who are the actual critic, because they would tell you then at dinner. So I think it's like you said, you have to be absolutely honest with most of what you're doing. It's important. The food world is indeed changing. It's just important that I think integrity, honesty is important because yes, when you get the accolades, you're gonna get booked out, and like it might not seem a bit accessible, but you have to try your best to just make sure it's a level playing platform. That I'm sure it's like that because when I was at Havana, it was basically like a United Nations sort of vibe in there. So like I was really pleased running into the kitchen. But being at dinner at my restaurant too, it's just having the sensibility of just a wide range of different people at the same table. It was supposed to be a mistake. Some people said nobody wants to sit together. Apparently everybody wants to sit together. Again, like I said, do the odd ideas. It's very important, especially in the things you believe in. I don't know if that answers the question or I'm somewhere else entirely.
Yellow bandana.
Thank you. As a future culinarian, graduating culinary school in May, I'm very interested with this whole entire idea about projecting one's culture, making sure that it stays authentic and true. So as I'm basically starting my career, and you all having been in this career for years and finally getting to this space in which you're celebrating your authentic cultures, what are some words of advice that you have for not only me, but other culinarians who may be interested in celebrating their heritage and sharing it with the rest of the world?
I would say go work for one of these chefs right here. Like, that's where I would start. I'm gonna jump in here. Like, you're coming out of culinary school. You are a person of color and not a person of color, and you wanna know about flavor, and you wanna know how to cook something maybe you might have not learned enough of in culinary school or a restaurant you worked in. You should be DMing these chefs. You should be emailing them. You should be showing up at their restaurants, because this is the future of how people are dining tomorrow. Or even if you look across the country and pockets of America, you are seeing more food of anybody's diaspora popping up, and it's because of the work that they're doing here.
I'll also add to that, when you're this early on in your career, a lot of people advise you to say yes to everything. Anything that, shows up in your inbox, just say yes to everything. All opportunities. It's a learning experience. I vehemently disagree, and I say, if it doesn't feel authentic to you, say no. Just say no. And that's how you retain your authenticity, because the more you say things to things that don't necessarily relate to you, the further you're getting away from your authenticity and your messaging. So just say no.
And to add to that, you do have, like she said, you have to stay very authentic to what appeals to you, because it's your journey and it's your story. You have to do it. But even the things you're doing that you might think don't have value actually do have a value. So like everything you're doing is actually learning. You're learning what not to do, what to do. I've been in situations where I'm tapping into like thoughts of almost over a decade ago of a place where it was extremely dysfunctional, but it was the best thing that I've ever done in my life, because it was just like it prepped you for like everything you can imagine doing. So dive into it and say no sometimes.
So we have 2 questions left. I'm gonna go green hat and then Sue in the front. I asked you guys to make it quick and short, because I'm gonna come back to the stage with one final question for everybody.
Hello? Oh, hey. I just wanna give you all your flowers. Each of you are such titans in the culinary realm, and it's such a beautiful thing to witness from this perspective. I remember going to your dinner when you were at Chef's Club, which is no longer there in Soho, and I was blown away by your dishes. COTE, I'm a regular. It's friggin' ridiculous, let me tell you. Tabaka, like, Havamar, Department of Culture, thank you guys for paving the way and really honing in on your true, authentic selves, but also keeping things so rooted. I find that to be incredibly important, and it makes us, those who are coming up in this industry, to know that we can lean in on our heritage and our cultures and do something incredibly amazing with it. So my hat's off to you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to introduce myself. I'm Kevin Chen from Red Paper Cook in the West Village. And I actually cooked at Chef's Club with Nina Lowell 2 weeks ago. Yeah, for a nonprofit organization. And to answer the other lady's question, just work really hard. You don't need to spend money on culinary school. Just dodge, work really hard, and that's it. But my question to you, to the panel is, so as my minorities, like ourselves, like how do you elevate the cuisine to be worth as much as a French cuisine? So everyone, I'm Taiwanese, Chinese, but everyone thinks Chinese food is cheap. And it's like people think of PF Chang's, Panda Express, or Chinese takeout. So how do you
just take the mic a little closer to you? I can't hear the question properly.
I got the
just
question.
keep the mic closer.
I got the question for you. The question is, and this is you took my question from me. So we can go down, or anybody can jump in. How do you take the food, cultural food, minority food, and put a price tag next to it as in European French food and make people eat it at that price, right? That amazing taco that we get for $1, but we know it's worth so much more. Can we give this young man some knowledge on that?
Absolutely. The same way an average Italian restaurant can put a price on whatever they're serving. Whatever you're serving is just as good, period. That's just it. It's not inferior. It's not beneath anything. It's just as good. It's just because they put a price on it and they served it in that environment. What food from anywhere in the world is not inferior to any at all. It isn't. We just need to serve this food with absolute dignity.
Fariyal?
That way, in the next few years, if you come to any of the restaurants we have.
Go ahead, go down the line. They're about to cut the mic.
Honestly, I don't even really have this conversation. This is what it costs to make the food that I make. So either you're going to pay for it or you're not.
David? Chintan?
And people complain about how expensive it is.
It's not expensive. It should probably be even more.
Ayo. You want to add anything?
No. I just want to add that, you know what, that people will respect as much as you respect yourself. You know, and if you feel that this is the worth that you bring to the table in any shape and form, you have to put that price to it. And you cannot compare yourself with somebody else or something culturally different. So it depends on you how you put it forward and how much you are willing to pay as a consumer for the product that you are serving.
I love that. Go ahead.
And to keep it short, it's be proud of where you come from. I think, you know, who put a price tag on this culture, that culture, this culture, right? Like, we all come from a kick-ass background, right? Like, stick with it, believe in what you do, put it out there, and I guarantee you, majority will enjoy and love it. So,
guys, give it up for this panel. They're phenomenal. Go eat at their restaurants. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Baldor.